recovery. Well, joining me now is Egypt's Minister of International Cooperation, Her Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat. Dr. Al-Mashat, very good morning to you. What are you seeing at the moment right now in terms of the recovery in Egypt?
Well, thank you very much. Egypt was one of the few countries globally that stood out in 2020 with positive growth rates of 2% and expectations of growth rates above 5% in 2021. And this comes on the back of extensive economic reforms that took place before the pandemic. These included the monetary, fiscal reforms, as well as the very important structural reforms to push the potential of the economy. Also, during the pandemic, we did not have a full lockdown. We had partial lockdowns, and many of the infrastructure projects continued, which absorbed a lot of the employment and helped mitigate the fallout from the pandemic.
I mean, you've got quite a young population. Presumably that has helped to an extent in terms of seeing off the pandemic.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, a lot of research is still going on to exactly explain the different, DNA traits and the different demographic traits across continents. But absolutely, that has helped a great deal.
Now, you mentioned some of the reforms that have been carried out in Egypt in recent years. You've been trying very hard to boost transparency in an attempt to attract inward investment. What sort of progress are you making on that?
Well, we believe that reform is a continuous process. And as much as the economic reforms helped us prepare for 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, we also announced our second wave of structural reforms that include very vital sectors, ICT sector, localizing industrialization, increasing manufacturing and exports, as well as focusing on agriculture. As Ministry of International Cooperation, we have been very focused on pushing transparency through making sure that all the development financing that comes from development partners, whether there are bilateral or multilateral institutions, are mapped to the SDGs, because we understand and we know all of us are witnessing the increased emphasis of private companies to actually have purpose-driven investments. ESG comes at the core of what businesses want, and that's why in the direction of transparency, increased governance, we have mapped this financing to SDGs, put it on our website. We also led a country multi-stakeholder framework that includes all development partners. And this has been documented in a recent book that was published on the 29th of June, Stakeholder Engagement Through Economic Diplomacy, where we all believe that it's not just the government, nor the private sector, nor civil society that can do it on their own for a better recovery. All of us have to work together. And it was through the principles of economic diplomacy that we document that we are giving Egypt as an example because the dividends were very clear in 2020.
Well, you mentioned diplomacy there, which is obviously intertwined with this to an extent. Israel sent a quite high-powered delegation to Egypt early this year. Is there a real opportunity there in terms of development?
Egypt is a country that believes in multilateralism, and this has been very evident when we take a look at the portfolio of development finance that we have done with the world. We're talking about $25 billion across 377 projects, very multi-sectoral. So again, a very ripe opportunity for different firms, whether domestic private sector or foreign private sector, to be able to come and tap on the potential of the economy, the young population, as you mentioned. So there is increased opportunity for that.
But is there a big opportunity for Egypt in particular to sort of position itself as Israel's closest strategic partner in the Arab world?
Relationship regionally has been one which is quite distinctive. And we have proven that we are able to work always through multilateral and peaceful solutions.
All right, Dr. Al-Mashat, very good to talk to you this morning. Thanks for joining me.